Good evening, everyone, and a hearty welcome to today's webinar. Let me begin by thanking you all for taking the time and interest to join us today on our discussion on opportunities for business and professionals in Dubai and UAE. My name is Akshata Shah, and I've been working with Global Business Services DMCC in the Corporate Services Department. Before we proceed to the session, I would like to give a brief introduction of our company, Global Business Services DMCC, known as GBS. Established in the year 2010, GBS has been proudly serving in the professional field for more than a decade, providing advisory and assistance with respect to formation of global entities, trusts, and foundations in the UAE and worldwide. Apart from accounting, CFO services, tax, and corporate compliance services, GBS acts as a one-stop solution for individuals and corporates looking to set up operations in UAE and various other tax-efficient jurisdictions around the world. We are located at Jumeirah Lake Towers in the Emirate of Dubai. Our associate office, Kothari Auditors and Accountants, known as KAA, was established in the year 1992 and operates from two offices located in Khalid bin Walid Street in the Emirate of Dubai and Bank Street, Rola in the Emirate of Sharjah. KAA has been proudly serving in the professional field for more than 30 years, providing management and financial consulting services, including audit, accounting, VAT, and company registration services. With this note, I would like to introduce our speakers for the day. It is my privilege to introduce before you Mr. Vipul Kothari, the founder and head of GBS and KAA. He has the distinction of passing the Chartered Accountancy at the age of 21 from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and went on to receive gold medals from BK School of Business Management in MBA Finance. We also have with us Mr. Pankaj Dara. He is a chartered accountant having expertise in taxation, wealth planning, MSME, and is a mentor to many startups in India. He has been awarded for his services by Institute as the best chairman in the Western region of India. He is also honored and awarded for his contribution and services towards society in various sectors. Apart from this, he is also an author of the book, Being CA of Your Life. Now, before I hand the session over to the speakers, please note that the session is being recorded and all the participants are muted. In case you have any questions, please raise them in the chat box and we shall answer them at the end of the session. So without delaying any further, let's move on to the session. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Akshita, for your words of introduction. And welcome everyone today to this webinar on the topic of opportunities for businesses and professionals in UAE. Before I start, let me just share the screen. Just give me a minute. So, I hope the screen is visible. Okay. So as we say, what are the advantages of being in UAE and what are the opportunities in terms of, businesses and professionals in UAE? So my talk will be split into, few segments, primarily, about the UAE. So I'll be sharing some facts and figures about what UAE is about. What are the opportunities, trends in this particular region and specifically in UAE? And what are the compliances that one needs to undergo in UAE? And thereafter, what are the different type of company structures that one can adopt or one can have to do business in UAE? So let me first begin by saying, UAE is, as you can see from this particular slide, UAE is right more or less in the middle of the world and the world map as we know it. It is within 6 to 8 hours of flying distance for almost 2/3 of the world's population. So except for Africa and Australia, majority of destinations are covered. And because of its geographical advantage and the infrastructure that it has created for transport, logistics, trade, tourism, it has become a central hub in the Middle East and North Africa region. And not just that, also it is becoming now a segment for businesses to actually set up their international holding entities in UAE. UAE, in brief, if we talk of, it was formed in 1971, and there are 7 states which got together and formed United Arab Emirates. So it is relatively a very young country, just 50 plus years. Abu Dhabi is the political capital and Dubai is the commercial capital. So there are a total of 7 city-states, though the official language is Arabic, but English and Hindi is very widely used. And it is a very modern, tolerant Islamic state with multicultural society which coexists. And the government of UAE always believes in minimal governmental interference on the business. What have been the advantages recently? If you see, UAE has permitted 100% foreign ownership to foreign ownership of the companies in majority of the sectors to businesses and people coming from overseas. Even property ownership is permitted to foreigners in certain areas. UAE did not have taxes till now. However, recently corporate tax is proposed and it has been announced that corporate tax will be implemented from June 2023. There are no personal income tax or capital gains tax for individuals yet. Also, there are no restrictions on forex transfers, and there are possibilities of residency visas based on the property ownership as well. UAE also has an extensive treaty network of double tax avoidance agreements. And using that, one can structure tax efficient operations, making UAE as a base. Of course, UAE is signatory to the international organizations like OECD, BAPS Action Plan, and those implementation is in progress. As you can see, UAE is a very small country also in terms of the population size, hardly 11 million. However, the GDP, if you see, is 600 billion plus. And the growth rate and the GDP per capita is $36,000. So it is amongst the so-called developed countries, and the real GDP growth also has been in the range of 3 to 4%. The general perception is that the oil sector actually is the major driver of this economy, but that is not the case. Non-oil, as you can see, contributes almost 72% to the GDP. And the biggest advantage of UAE is the currency is pegged to US dollar. It's a standard rate which has been fixed since many, many years. Globally, of course, there have been challenges in terms of inflation and all that, whereas UAE has had a moderate inflation. It has excellent infrastructure in terms of the ports where, Jebel Ali, and there are many other ports which are quite large. Globally, it would come within the top 10 ports in terms of the cargo movements. And UAE also is very, very active in the international trade market. So you can see that total exports and re-exports are almost $200 billion plus. So primarily UAE is very, very active on the economic front. And it is, as you can see from that particular slide, that UAE is not a sort of an island or a small place where generally you have those tax havens, which are primarily just a financial center with economy not being so developed. Whereas UAE is an economy which is very well developed, though it is a low or, it was a zero tax till now. It is a business center where one can actually establish business and run their global operations from. Among some other important and interesting data and statistics is ease of doing business rank is 16, paying taxes rank 30, even corporate tax very low, custom duty VAT also is merely 5%. So very low tax rates. And as I said, UAE does not believe in any barriers. So there are no trade barriers or quota. So import and export, generally no trade barriers are there. And very stable investment grade as far as the government ranking is concerned. So UAE has been always a tax-free onshore jurisdiction. And obviously, there are many free zones. So even after introduction of corporate taxes, some of the free zones will be, and the companies which are in the free zones will be entitled to 0% tax, provided they do business internationally and not within UAE. And it is obviously, well-established legal system it has in terms of commercial law, though which are based on civil law. However, there are common law jurisdiction within UAE also, like international financial centers, like Dubai International Financial Center, DIFC as we call, or Abu Dhabi Global Market. And these are based on common law. And any company within UAE can resolve for dispute resolution purpose, they can adopt and follow the common law mechanism and go for the arbitration or adjudication via the DIFC, which is the common law court. What are primarily the strengths in this particular region? Now, this region, as I call it, MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, has a population of 1.3 billion. And the regional GDP is $2.5 trillion. Because of this, such a huge GDP, there is great amount of infrastructure spent by the government. And because of the oil wealth which has been generated in this particular region, you can see that the sovereign wealth funds of UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, all these countries put together amounts to more than 1.6 trillion. Probably as of current date, it could be somewhere around 2 trillion US dollars. So that's a huge amount of wealth which is there in this region and in the hands of the government, which is being utilized partly for the development of the country and the economy. Because till now, the industrial sector had not really developed, and the focus was more on trade, tourism, and business in terms of the transport and logistics. However, the country is now focusing on industrial infrastructure and developing industries so as to reduce the dependence on the import of essential goods and commodities. One of the biggest advantage of this region, again, is that there are very minimal of labor regulations and there are no trade unions. So there is very great stability as far as the employees or the human resources are concerned. Again, region has excellent security and it is not affected by geopolitical issues either in the region or internationally. As I mentioned, corporate tax is going to be introduced, but no personal tax would be there unless an individual is carrying out business in his personal name. Opportunities, as we would see, primarily, these are the segments that we feel has a great potential. And this covers vast network of businesses, international trade and logistics, because of the infrastructure which has been created in UAE and in the surrounding region. It is a gateway now to the trade for the international markets, especially the African markets and the Middle Eastern markets. Manufacturing had not really developed in this particular region for a long period of time. And what manufacturing was there was primarily relating to oil and refining of oil and large scale industrial units, few of them were there. However, now there is a push by the government, and UAE government has set up ministry which actually looks into industrial development, and they have a plan to develop this particular segment. So this is one of the key areas where there are great amount of opportunities. Of course, property has always been a hotspot, UAE and Dubai in particular. And that continues to be the case because of, again, people coming in from across the globe to settle within UAE. Infrastructure is another area because UAE always strives to ensure that it has the best and the most modern infrastructure across the globe. And in that pursuit of excellence, obviously, there is always development happening on the infrastructure. Railways, which was not existent probably around 15 years back, gradually came into being by introduction of Dubai Metro. And thereafter now, entire UAE-wide railway grid is being established and railway line is being set up. So railway, electricity, of course, and apart from now, electricity by conventional means, solar energy and nuclear energy and other means of sustainable energy is the focus area. Service sector, of course, because of, again, the population in this region and people able to serve the entire Middle East and North Africa region, service segment is another opportunity. Education, because of, again, the population of expatriates and foreigners coming in and settling here, education, whether it's primary education, secondary, or even college and higher education. In order to carry out any sort of business activities or carry out any professional activities, also one would need to set up a onshore company within UAE. Before we go on to the onshore company setups in or different type of company setups in UAE, I'll just quickly rush through some of the regulatory framework specifically from the corporate angle which is applicable in UAE. Value-added tax, which is equivalent of Indian GST, goods and services tax, was introduced in 2018 and it remains at 5% on majority of goods and products, and some of the items are exempt. So it's a very simplified system where classification issues are not there for differential type of rates. And again, export of goods is exempted or sort of zero rated. So there is no VAT applicable on that. And there are certain free zones. If businesses are done within the free zone, they also remain out of the purview of UAE value-added tax. There are exemptions to air travel, education, health, and residential real estate from UAE VAT. And tourists are able to get VAT refunds. So very simplified system. Excise tax also was introduced in 2017. Of course, it is not on all the manufactured goods. Primarily, it is applicable on tobacco products or smoking devices or carbonated drinks or energy drinks or sugary drinks, and which remains in the range of 50 to 100%. It has been raised in some cases to 200% recently. Of course, any business any individual or company carrying out business over here needs to have substance, specifically if they are carrying out certain type of activities with related parties or with their group companies or associate concerns. And this is purely to ensure that people do not just set up companies in UAE for the purpose of tax evasion or tax avoidance. And there has to be genuine business happening, meaning companies need to have offices, employees, and business activity happening from UAE. Otherwise, penalties are considerably heavy as far as economic substance regulation goes. This was introduced a couple of years back, and this is as a part of the OECD's BAP section plan, which wants to ensure that tax transparency across different jurisdictions. Even ultimate beneficial owner compliance has come in, whereby if an individual is holding shares in a particular company, whether he is the ultimate beneficial owner or there are some other people on whose behalf he is holding it, that also needs to be filed. Again, this is to ensure transparency of the ownership and to avoid tax evasion happening. And for this, all this information needs to be filed with the authority. Having said that, one thing is said there that this information is not publicly available to anyone. Yes, on the order of the government authority or the regulatory authority, the information would be disclosed by the licensing authority to the appropriate court, but it is not available for public record. For public record, primarily it is the directors and managers who are generally, that information is available publicly on a portal, which contains the name and activities of the company. UAE also has been in the forefront of tightening the anti-money laundering regulations, specifically in the in wake of the international issues relating to money laundering and resulting whether it's drug money, terrorist financing, or any sort of illegal activities which gets carried out. So in line with that, UAE also has tightened its anti-money laundering regulations. And under those regulations, it is essential for all the businesses to ensure they are in compliance with the anti-money laundering regulations. So even banking system, whenever funds are being received in the bank account or being paid out of the bank account, banks would ask for the information, purpose of the payment, and the supporting documentation, and that justification has to be provided. Cash transactions are reduced to the minimal. And even the businesses, some of the businesses specifically, which are considered as high risk, which is gold and jewelry, real estate, corporate services, auditors or lawyers who are actually helping clients in setting up companies or managing their companies, even insurance brokers, they are all required to fulfill certain filing and ensure that they also comply with there are specific guidelines which are relating to those kind of businesses. But in general, all the other type of businesses also need to ensure that they do proper KYC and compliance check of their suppliers, of their customers, sources of funds that they are getting in the company, and the payments that they are making to any third party. This is to again ensure integration with the international financial system and ensure that it's a very transparent jurisdiction and which is in compliance with the best practices internationally. UAE also has implemented FATCA, which is the American US Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and as well as OECD's Common Reporting Standards, under which all the bank accounts primarily and the holder of the bank account needs to comply and give declaration for FATCA and Common Reporting Standards, specifically where they will have to disclose their tax residency, that they are the shareholders, the ultimate beneficial owners are tax resident of which particular jurisdiction. That needs to be reported to the bank. So if a company has 4 shareholders, all 4 UBOs, their details have to be declared with the banks. And banks in turn, what will happen is under this, if any of the shareholders are of a foreign tax residency, the information relating to that company could get disclosed to the tax authorities of that other home country where they are tax resident. This is again in line with the transparency globally in terms of sharing of information, and which majority of countries and jurisdictions have adopted and implemented. I'll not go into much detail. Of course, UAE also has a bankruptcy law, and that gives, because this was much awaited earlier, bankruptcy law was not there. Now, for genuine business reasons, if there are losses and companies unable to sustain and survive, they can file for restructuring or for winding up the company. And subject to certain guidelines, the courts would permit either restructuring exercise to be carried out, or else bankruptcy and winding up of the company. This is a very welcome law which allows companies to actually face situation and challenges which are genuine business nature to go the bankruptcy route and close the operations. Of course, there are anti-bribery legislation in the UAE also. And so, any public or private sector employees, who are involved in any sort of bribery would be prosecuted by either fines or jail term or both. So these are all in line with international best practices. 100% foreign direct investment also is permitted in the UAE. Earlier, of course, it was required in apart from the free zones where you had 100% foreign ownership. Outside free zones in the mainland area, which we call it as non-free zone area, there UAE national was required as a 51% shareholder. However, effective from last year, they've opened up majority of sectors to foreign ownership. And such companies then do not need to have UAE national as a partner. They could have 100% foreign ownership. It could be single shareholder, multiple shareholders. and they could carry out business on majority of business related activities. And this has been a welcome decision as far as this, doing business in UAE is concerned. As I had mentioned, UAE also has many double tax avoidance agreements. Now, this, what it does is it helps the clients and businesses who have international presence and operations to set up their holding company in UAE. And once they have a holding company in UAE, and then they could invest into down the line subsidiaries in different parts of the world with which UAE has double tax avoidance agreements, which would mean that whenever the dividend payouts or interest payouts happen from those subsidiaries, those countries to UAE, a lower rate of withholding tax would be deducted. And this will now get an added advantage because UAE is implementing corporate tax. So now all companies will be able to showcase that they are being taxed in UAE, and hence they should not be taxed in the other country, subject to, of course, fulfilling again conditions of those BTAs. There is golden residency visa. Of course, UAE has come out with residency visa programs. Earlier, it used to be hardly 2 or 3 year visa for foreigners, and they had to be renewed. Now UAE permits a 10-year residency visa, and the criteria are quite liberal, with an investment of around 2 million dirham, which is around 600 odd thousand, less than $600,000. One can get a 10-year golden residency visa. There are, of course, other criteria also. Apart from this, if someone invests in real estate in UAE, they also would be entitled to golden residency of 10 years. Some investors who have lower amount of investments, they would be entitled to lower, 5 years visa. Even 10-year or 5-year visas are being granted to university graduates or high school graduates, or even some specialized professions which are being encouraged by UAE government, like doctors, scientists, inventors, specialists in engineering, science and engineering, or sportsmen or creatives. So as you can see, UAE has come out with very many changes in recent past, especially in the last 5 years. And with these changes, what is happening is, earlier where UAE, there were hardly any corporate compliances. Some compliances and regulations have come in, but advantage of that would be that UAE is now seen in international business community as a jurisdiction which is compliant with the international regulations and best practices. And hence the rating of UAE from international community in terms of doing business also would improve to that extent. Coming to company structures in UAE, as far as companies are concerned, primarily there are different type of company structures that one can have for setting up businesses in UAE. I'll give a brief overview. In this chart, as you can see, primarily you can set up either an offshore company or an onshore company. Offshore companies are not entitled to carry out business within UAE. They will not have office within UAE. They will not have employees also within UAE. So these are more like paper companies, the likes of BVI, Seychelles, or Mauritius, where you do not have substance. So these are primarily meant to act as holding of investments internationally, is one which you could do. But again, this offshore companies will not be entitled for any benefits under double tax avoidance agreements. So practically, these are meant mainly as holding entities for either UAE-based assets or assets in countries where you are not looking at primarily having any double tax avoidance agreement benefits. However, if you wish to actually carry out businesses internationally or within UAE, then options are to set up either a free zone entity or non-free zone, which is mainland business. Free zone advantage is, of course, 100% beneficial ownership is now permitted in free zone as well as non-free zone. But the major advantage that free zones going forward will have is there is a possibility they would be entitled to 0% corporate tax. So, corporate tax would be at 0%, provided they carry out businesses only internationally and not within UAE. And some of the other type of activities, which the details are yet awaited from the tax authority of UAE, but international business, if they do, that could be structured as a zero tax. However, free zone companies, though it will be zero tax, they will be considered as tax resident, and they will be considered as taxable entity in UAE and thus entitled to double tax avoidance agreement benefits also, because they are required to file tax returns and claim, based on their nature of income, 0% exemption. Limitation of free zone, of course, is that free zones are specific areas. As you know, in India, you have free trade zones, which are specific locations where you have companies established, has to operate in that free zone or free trade zone. Similarly, here also, free zone entities have to operate within the specific territory or area which is demarcated for that free zone. So it cannot have presence outside the free zone. Thus, to do business within UAE, non-free zone entity, which is mainland entity as we call it, is something which can be looked at. And in that, there are options. You could set it up as either proprietorship or partnership or limited liability company, or of course, public joint stock company or even branch offices. So depending on the nature of business and the tax structuring that one would wish to do, one can select from this. The most common form which is being utilized is limited liability company. I'll not go into details of the pros and cons or the features of this, except that, the advantage in free zone, offshore and mainland primarily, as I said, is offshore is just for holding of assets and where you are not looking at any double tax avoidance benefits. And free zones and mainland is where you actually wish to carry out real business. And of course, within UAE, if you wish to carry out, then mainland, which is the non-free zone entity. These details I'm not going through. What we'll do is, whoever is interested, we can share the presentation, so they would be able to then go through. Just I wish to highlight here is primarily that resident directors in offshore companies are not required. And so there's no need that you need to have a UAE resident as a director in these in offshore companies. And there are no account filing requirements, obviously no requirements for office. So, it's a very cost-effective solution for holding of assets internationally or within UAE. Free zone onshore companies, if you wish to set up, there are different type of companies, single per shareholder company, multiple shareholder companies, or branch of foreign company, or branch of local, meaning UAE companies. However, in that also you get 100% foreign ownership. Tax holidays are there, 15 years to 50 years, depending on which free zone you decide to set up a company in. There are no restriction on movement of capital or profits. Obviously, local director is not mandatory, but it is advised that a person holding director position should have a UAE resident visa. Otherwise, bank account opening and operations could be difficult. And companies can be owned by individual or international company or UAE companies. And our free zones and free zone companies will be entitled to double tax treaty benefits because they are considered as tax resident and they will have a permanent establishment in UAE. There are very many free zones in UAE. There are almost 45 free zones, but some of the prominent ones are Jebel Ali or the Airport free zone. And these are, large free zones like Jebel Ali free zone. If you see, it's a massive area where actually a lot of warehousing, logistics, and manufacturing happens and spread over a large area and very adjacent to the Jebel Ali port, which is again one of the very, largest seaports in this particular region. There are many free zones, either sector specific or general free zones where one can carry out business activities. So I'm not going into this detail more. Mainland company again will be required, as I said, to do business outside the free zone within the UAE. Different type where 100% is permitted in majority of sectors, except some where local UAE national might be required. In mainland also no profit or capital movement. Of course, indirect taxes like VAT is there. Direct tax in terms of corporate tax will come in from 2023 June onwards. Currently, it is not there. What are the major advantages of setting up a company in UAE? As I will just summarize now in terms of, that it is a central location. It is located midway between Asia, Africa, and Europe primarily. So that serves as a hub for trading, logistics, and business activities for this entire belt of Asia, Africa, and Europe. Time zone advantage also because it is in the middle. So obviously it can work with East and West both, though it will have less number of hours with one particular country, but then it can still work. What also happened was till now UAE was following weekend of Friday, which has changed from last year to Sunday. So it is now aligned with the international weekends. So the number of days that one can do business with international market remains as 5, Monday to Friday. Of course, Saturdays also banking system is working here, but internationally it does not work. UAE and Gulf region, they are one of the largest importers of very many commodities. And that's why, that's a big opportunity which one can tap into. And they are also exporters of oil and other natural resources. And with this wealth now, the region, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, all of these are now focusing on economic diversification, because moving away from just oil-based revenue for the government to the general globe, GDP generated revenue for the government. And that's where the business opportunities will be there. And because now it has allowed 100% foreign ownership, no restrictions, no corporate tax till June. And even after June, the corporate tax, what is coming in is hardly 9%. So it's not a very high rate of corporate tax. A very simple tax system is coming into effect where there will not be too many non-deductible expenditure except, donations or some penalties, fines, or interest beyond 30% of EBITDA. Other than that, there are majority, your book profit will be deemed as your taxable profit, except for those some few non-deductibles. So it's a very simplified system that UAE always believes in and will implement it. Of course, transfer pricing rules, regulations are there, which will have to be implemented in line with the international practices again. But again, being this jurisdiction where it has that advantage of confluence of East and the West, it can take advantage and people can do business using this particular location. And currently UAE does not have, again, thin capitalization rules also. And that is why you can have investment by way of equity and loan. And that's why, again, tax efficiency can be achieved using that particular route. With that, I would actually conclude on our presentation. Of course, we, as Akshita mentioned, have been based in UAE for all 3 decades now, and we are into company formation, assurance, valuation, CFO, accounting, you call most of the professional services. And we will be glad to assist and help you in setting up of the company or your business operations in UAE. And for that purpose, we will share the contact details on the chat also. So you can write an email if you wish to have the presentation or any further guidance and clarification with respect to doing business in UAE. With that, I would conclude my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in today. And I will hand over to my colleague, Mr. Pankaj Dara, who would now present about, again, the topic, on opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful insight. We now have Mr. Pankaj Dara to take the session forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Vipul sir. It's voice audible and perfect.
Yes, perfect.
It was a nicely presentation done by you for explaining about the business opportunities in UAE. We are discussing about, sir, we met in Macau and World Congress, and subsequently decided to that have some kind of sessions which will be reciprocation. Like a UAE person can do business in India and India person can do business in UAE. So we are
UAE.
considering the both way opportunities. So the first
Yes.
part was concluding that the person from India or from any country of the world, like any person, any Indian residing or any other non-resident residing beyond UAE can also do business by understanding the law, procedure, and the formalities requirement over there, or what is the logistics hub and what are the facilities available over there, and what are their contribution to GDP, what are the most factors or sectors which are working over there. I'll just concentrate on my issues of professional interest. This is that on a business interest, right? We can collaborate both subjects together because a business need all the facilities which and service sector needs. I was referring before going to this session. I'll just share my screen. Like the MSME sector is also there in Dubai, which is almost, I read about it. It was a 95% is contributed by MSME sector, and definitions of Indian MSME sector and Dubai MSME sectors are very much different. I'll just give you a brief highlight only. Rest then can be obtained. So this is what there are definitions of MSME. Like trading, manufacturing, and services. But in India, the definition is about only trading and manufacturing. There is no separate definition for services. So the MSME sector or the world which has to be developed can be large, small, medium, enterprise like micro, small, and medium also. All the big corporate also need ancillary units or for subletting their production capacities or making services aligned from getting to others. So this is what the definition as per UAE standards, that is a formulation of a presentation in a SME report, which I just give for a highlight purpose. There are a lot of requirements, that is it should be employed less than 9, 35 or 75. So this is what trading, manufacturing, and services sector which are needed to be concentrated for conducting business in UAE. This is MSME reports, and which are saying what is autonomous enterprises, what are partner enterprises, that is linked enterprises. A lot of definitions are being given, what is all about the landscape and economy. I just wanted to highlight the few points. Later can be developed by any person who wants to go in this area. Now, as far as Dubai, UAE international hub and a market for business entrepreneurship is a very big scale conducted in UAE. These all the Kotharis are also referred that being the 6 to 8 journey logistically across the globe, other than African countries. So that's why the global enterprise index is too high, that it can get a larger opportunities in skill and education and finance. Basically, where the business enterprises go, we find that the finance is the major requirement, because ultimately the world require finance for conducting the business and converting the business into opportunities or opportunity into business. This is a both way. Means a UAE can be a hub for taking your best utilization of ecosystem. Like India on the previous is the third largest ecosystem in startup, right? Now Dubai, UAE is an ecosystem which provide you best ecosystem in the world for considering this all kind of services. It has best ecosystem in kind of startup. Basically, many startups which are developed in India goes to the Dubai or UAE for next enhancement and acceleration for their purposes, because this being a hub for international market and easily accelerator. Basically, the India or many countries in the world other than US, China, and India or United Kingdom, they are only acting as a base for startup, where you can just incubate an idea or convert your idea into an action, where a small products can be developed or where a small services can be developed into a small area. But when you need to accelerate to a world, or you can make a big world-class products like Twitter, or a world-class product like WhatsApp, you need an accelerator companies which will be utilizing it. So the Dubai or UAE is the base for it, where the maximum acceleration of the product is done, because it's an financial hub of the world also. Getting this into the space, we can understand that the logically, even though ideas generate across the globe, but they need finance and need ecosystem where various companies are operating, and you need to test about it. Like rightly said by Vipul sir, that UAE was majorly believed as an oil producing companies or support to an oil producing country. But subsequently, they are realizing that when when all the world is moving toward alternative fuel sources, now India is moving to hydrogen, most of the countries are moving to electric vehicle, other water sources. So the oil producing companies are left with a less option to concentrate on the few only oil industries. In fact, they have an ecosystem developed over there for financial management, skill development management, all the connectivity across logistics hubs, all is across developed in UAE. So they want to utilize that, converting into a positive factor of the world other products. So this way, now the most of the startups in India, most of the startups which are in India are moving to Dubai or UAE, because ecosystem is beautifully developed here, where we can accelerate the product to an international market, considering the base and volume to it. India provide only the base in terms of consumer, but it does not provide the base in terms of value added or in terms of valuation, because ultimately a corporate can serve freely, or freebies can be given to some extent to the audiences of the country, but it cannot be given ultimately free for a lifetime, or ultimately for some kind of free valuations. It has to be accelerated in the corporate world, or it has to be accelerated to high paying capacity, or it has to be accelerated to above class, so that the income generation revenue could be started over there. So this is the main parity of the gap between India and UAE. India can provide a base for getting that startups, but getting them accelerate in the world, UAE is getting a best preference. The first preference was due to taxation only, which was it was considered as a hub, because in India normally the tax rate goes from 30% to 42% in terms of individual, also in terms of private limited company also, and in terms of other statutory bodies which are to be established. But in UAE, even though after introduction of the tax will be around 9 to 10%, which is to be talked about. There will be a surcharge or says anything about that. But considering these factors of taxation, it is considerable that a startup which is developed in India can have a good accelerator at Dubai or UAE, or any person who want to have a startup at India. So primarily, I have listed what skill is most in demand in Dubai, which are most kind of businesses which are need to be acquired skills, so that the person who want to do job over there, want to shift over there, these kind of sectors are very much in demand across the sector. Accounting, finance is the most preferred jobs in digitalization and artificial intelligence, which is getting a lot of importance these days. HR, legal sector is one of the important sector, like rightly pointed out by the Vipul sir, that legal sector is highly paid sector in the UAE, where the legal compliance is most, because when you become the global hub for companies to manufacture, a company for becoming a hub for transportation, logistics, all the legal requirement of the many countries has to be followed, because there are the corporates of many countries across the globe. So they definitely need an legal assistant and legal compliances in terms of completing their formalities of the country and UAE too. So, and almost like in the initial talk of the lecture, we talked about that the most of the preferred languages English or Hindi, and other languages are also booming out, because it is getting a multicultural country. So that is the country is growing, having a lot of sectors, and engineers are finding a lot of places, because other than when you go for oil sector, a lot of engineering sectors will be coming over there, which will be pulling up the demands in a very better way. Dubai is why these tech companies are moving, mostly the tech companies which are trying to move, because it is easily financing is, because technological companies extremely need fund for their expansion or initial state of prototype of designing. The tech companies need an extremely money oriented, fund oriented the process, because the testing and implementation of the software take a long time to get a proper result, and they need a company which can really get results for them and they can implement this. Like there are a lot of issues for software developing countries that once they develop a product, they may become absolute within a few minutes, few days, or few seconds as the countries, as the technology is moving upon. Now, similar case was observed in Chat GPT, which got in 10 billion user within 5 days, while this all the products which are running in the country or in the world across the globe took 10 years to cross that 10 billion followers or 10 billion user of that. So the technology is changing so much. So the international organizations need to update themselves with the technology. So technology is paying a heavy cost, which has to be replaced at any cost. Suppose the banking sector is there, they have to replace the technological cost. Like in world which is on the verge of developing a digital currency. Now only the 10 countries in the world have developed digital currency, and 8 are African countries, ninth is China, third and 10th is India. So this digital currency, when will be developed in India, may require a technological hub across Dubai or UAE for international transaction. So there, as a business, they can develop for a cloud computing business across Middle East or this kind of UAE and Saudi Arabia. There's a definitely scope for cloud infrastructure in UAE area, where it will become a hub for recording the transaction of internationally across digital currency transaction is being there. So this is the way we have to think the profession, the business from all the angles. Once you get understand with the law of the land, regulations, compliances, it's okay. We are going into that, going to the part of it. The rest is business. So when you do business or profession, you have to acquainted with the knowledge around it. How the demographic changes are there, how the countries are moving, which directions are moving, which sectors are lucrative, which sectors are non-lucrative, which sectors require changes, where the development is there, where technological changes is there, where the artificial intelligence will be taking in route, where the drone technology will be required. So this kind of infrastructure has need some kind of ecosystem where you can just test your products, test your viability, test your feasibility. You can, for that purpose, of funds is a major problem for all the corporates. I've been working with many organizations. They say that they need funds because they want to test and implement. Once the testing is over, again they need a fund because the technology becomes obsolete. Now we were talking about the SaaS. Now there is a new technology called PaaS. So this is what the global economy is moving in a very faster rate. So we need to understand there's some countries, definitely like UAE, provide a better destination for doing a business, where you can get knowledge about the globe and across the products can be understood, and accordingly the professionals who are watching this our presentation or who are live with the presentation with us, they can definitely understand that the practice area or a business needs two-way reciprocation. It cannot happen that suppose the product is developed in India, it requires after sometimes international penetration. A product developed in UAE at least will not be for a UAE because the population is 2 billion. And so to concentrate or have a penetration area across the globe, they need some bigger markets. So the understanding of compliance is a one part, understanding of business is a second part, and developing a startup is a next part where there is a shortfall in ecosystem. That's why we are talking, this industry is definitely booming in UAE, that is fintech. That is the highest growing platform for fintech. You will find the majority of the banking sector which is being now converted to fintech. That is finance and technology is the future for which they need to be understanding. Like now UAE has implemented VAT. Now definitely from moving from the VAT, they will be getting implementation to it's a part of GST. But the complete GST model has to be developed, and GST model or other digital currency will definitely require fintech. Without the help of the fintechs, the implementation of this procedure is absolutely not thinkable. Not thinkable at all, not thinkable. You can move in a direction where the technology will not part of it. This is the what I developed my background for this session. Like that mindset has to be developed from across the borders, like business and professionals in India, business and professionals in Dubai, UAE, business and professional across the globe who want to operate in UAE and Dubai and who want to operate in India. So I'm taking the all mixed culture, mixed thought, mixed processes, mix a variety of the thoughts to continue with this presentation. Until and unless you get an idea of a business, you cannot go to a country. Compliances will be done. Kotaris will be doing your compliance, but until the business will develop, business will enhance, business need all. Business need funds, skill development, software, management, logistics, all factors are needed. For this, India government has given startup, Indian definition as per startup is, it should have registered in India, at headquarters should be in India, and should not be more than 10 years, and 100 crore should be its turnover. These are few examples I've been citing about it. It should be by registering a startup in India, you can have a benefit of 3 years income tax benefit or tax exemption, sales certification, few trademarks. Like Kotaris also pointed the points during the subsequent that once a corporate established in UAE, he has to comply with the law of the land. Similarly, we have to comply with the law of the land of the country where the products are belonging. Suppose a business is developed in UAE and it is in the form of startup. And startup in Dubai, the definition of startup, UAE, the startup definition is that it should be oriented to single product or a single service. So it can enhance their skill in the startup. Once the startups are developed there, around 700 startups are there in UAE, and almost 18,000 startups in India and 71,000 in America. So going by the standards, the number of startups in India are increasing. But the global ecosystem requires the testing, implementation, feasible viability. Now the concept of sustainability is also coming into the picture. So these corporates, when we move to the sustainability or the sustainability reporting, ultimately our international organizations are working in UAE, they has to concentrate on sustainability too. So this kind of environment is very much important for us to understand. Taking a business to a formal procedure, to doing a formal business, and looking into the futuristic business, like what are the changes which we have to adopt in the business. Like one of the gentlemen asked, what are the accounting standard requirements in UAE? What are the standards to be followed? What are the to be followed over there? Definitely you have to follow the rule of the land, but you have to follow internationally also. That has to be considered in mind. You cannot go in a singular mode. Now the business does not move in a singular mode. You have to think what is the future technology which will be destroying your business, or what is your technology which will be given in the world and which will take away all the business in the future directions. Like the next year, the digital currency will be also a part of UAE. They have to adopt it, because when the international community will be starting, transaction will be starting, you have to understand the process. You have to take the benefit of blockchain technology. So the professionals who want to migrate to the countries like bigger arena of where the technology will be playing part, you have to understand what is the technology you have to use and what are the base for it. Now, you cannot move in a judgmental way, or you cannot move in a theoretical way that this will happen or this should happen. Now, a predefined method has been given that this technology will be used, until and unless you provide the scale to it or enhance improvement to it. Without providing the scale enhancement to it, it's very difficult. That running a robust system will be out of fashion, out of danger. So even software companies are finding difficult to cope up with the daily changes. Of course, there will be a cyber security, cyber attacks. There will be threats. Definitely, this all digital technology will bring you all threats to and all problem that you can say that it's an easy money for the hackers to get the money through a digital currency or through a technology purpose banking. So fintech like technology needs an expert. So when you're moving forward technology, software, when you move to a service type of industry, you should be a partner like a CA, or we should partner with the engineer with all this has to be hand in hand. Both has to be hand in hand, because what accounts has to be converted in technical language, or what technical language requires accounting procedure to be done. These both are totally entirely different. Now it's an hand in hand. The world is going hand in hand. Technology is going hand in hand with the traditional basis of accounting. Like the days when the Kotaris started, there were a lot of manual accounting, manual procedures. Now all has been converted to digital. So the role of artificial intelligence will definitely come into the picture, where you will be needing all kind of services under one roof. So the businessman who are traveling from they feel that they should come to India for this purpose, they should understand they should get a registration under DPIT. That is, a person who want to get startup business in India from Dubai or UAE in India, they need DPIT registration. Until a DPIT registration is not there, your startup will be not considered in India. Absolutely not. The definition of MSME is different in India, and definition of MSME in UAE is totally different. We have only turnover and investment definition. They have classified the definition in three different parts, that is trading, manufacturing, and services. So this is what a difference has been given and pointed out and sorted out in the industry area. So this is that like in India, there are lucrative sectors. You can observe that many lucrative sectors. These lucrative sectors are need to be developed in UAE too. Like there is logistics, it will need for insurance, it's software, infrastructure, banking, lot of social commerce, fintech, e-pharmacy. So lot of requirements will be there in Dubai and UAE. So definitely you can start biggest startups in Dubai and UAE in terms of this sector which I have been listing here. You can take the opportunity. All the corporates will be needing this kind of services in terms of startup. So you can develop the practice in a traditional business arena, or you can develop practice by way of startup, or you can develop a business opportunity in terms of normal business thinking, or you can develop in terms of startup. So this is what definitely a part, definitely when the global hub of logistics is being developed in UAE, then definitely you will be needing home services, you will be needing other social services, you will be needing B2B agents for delivering the goods. The lot of services will automatically require by the corporate world when you go to the countries like UAE. This is what I have defined. This is in India, in Dubai, UAE, you need a proprietorship or a stock company. Here it is called LLP in India, that is limited liability partnership, while in UAE it is called LLC. So the difference has to be understood, the procedure has to be understood. So until and unless we get conversant or understanding the process, it is difficult for us to get through the laws. You have to understand, like sir explained anti-money laundering law. There are no requirement of labor laws in UAE, but definitely there are labor law requirement in India. So vice versa, you can understand that these kind of requirements you cannot mitigate. Mostly these kind of sectors are working, which will be heavily banking upon or heavily bullish. You can develop upon your product, services, or suggest your client, or you can develop your business model across this. Or any person who want to get diversification into the businesses, he should think logistics. I beg totally on my bet on logistics sector, because like rightly pointed by Vipul sir, if the UAE is going to be become the biggest hub for the world economy, or going to be getting into the port areas, they will be definitely needing this kind of startups, they will be needing this kind of business, they will be needing their kind of professional. So you should understand the sectors which are growing over there. Until unless you understand the sector, it's kind of like going in a dark room where there's no ray of hope or no ray of light. You go with the planned movement, the sector which are coming up, you can developing up, you will easily find the opportunities that they want to catch it up. Lot has to be done, lot has to be said, but I was supposed to speak only 30 minutes. Sir, I conclude my these sessions. Lot of there has to be there. Mostly these are the sectors which are need to be understood and developed. What are the sectors where the professionals or businessmen can work on both the countries, from here to there or there to here. So this kind of will give clean technology, waste management, like Dubai or UAE has a surrounded by sea, ocean, so you can develop and water technology for that. So these kind of opportunities can be easily developed in the countries like UAE. Sir, over to you, Akshada. I'll just.
Thank you very much, sir, for the enlightening session. Before we close the session, we would like to take up a few questions raised by the participants.
Yeah. Pankaj ji, thank you so much for quite interesting and insightful presentation, and a lot of, I think, information that you've shared, and very, very interesting and informative. So I think we can start with the questions, Mr.
Yes,
Monik.
Sunil. Yes,
There
yes,
are.
yes.
Can you just stop the share?
Yeah, sorry. It's fine. Sorry. Yeah, yes.
So,
No, I think
thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vipul and Mr. Pankaj, for your valuable information. We have a few questions here. The first question is from Mr. Viren. He is asking what are tax holidays?
Pardon?
What are tax holidays?
Tax holidays in UAE, currently, of course, as on today, there are no corporate taxes applicable in UAE, whether company is registered as offshore or free zone company or in the mainland. However, effective from 1st June 23, mainland, all companies in UAE will be subject to 9% corporate tax. In that, when the tax law comes into effect, free zone companies which satisfy certain conditions, and those conditions are that the free zones where they've registered, that they should have been granted tax holidays, and they carry out business internationally, meaning no UAE based local business, and they have proper substance in that company, they will be entitled to tax, so-called holiday, you can say it would be a 0% tax rate.
Okay. There is another person called Mr. Mohan Acharya. He wants to know the accounting standards, IFRS or UAE has their own accounting standards. He wants to know whether UAE has their own accounting standards, basically.
Okay. See, UAE does not have its own accounting standards. It has resolved and adopted IFRS. So primarily the mandate is that all companies in UAE should prepare accounting and audit report in accordance with IFRS. And even as per tax law, it is in accordance with IFRS.
Okay, thank you. There is one more, Mr. Badruddin Ujjainwala. He would like to know if there are any job opportunities for new chartered accountants if he wants to come to Middle East.
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of job opportunities for professionals, chartered accountants with experience. One in tax and compliance section of the practice, because UAE is implementing corporate tax and it will be applicable. So a lot of companies will have to implement and start doing their filings and all that. Also in the audit profession also, because now tax law is coming. Till now, all companies were not required as such to do filing of annual accounts or audited accounts. But with tax law coming into effect, definitely there will be a need as and when assessment happens that the accounts will have to be audited and submitted to the authorities as and when they demand. So in that profession also, as well as in business and industry, someone is interested, definitely there is a potential again, because the businesses are expanding, and UAE as such after COVID has picked up very well. And from that perspective, because businesses are growing, definitely there'll be need in finance sector, accounting segment, all those roles, definitely there are openings.
Thank you, Mr. Vipul. There is another question from Mr. Amar Jain. He would like to know how one can attract work from UAE, Dubai, while practicing and having office in India. What are the ways to approach the same?
I think the way to approach is come and meet people over here.
Yes.
Showcase your strengths. No, there are quite a few practicing, I think it will be quite interesting for people who are present here to know that there are probably 5,000 chartered accountants, Indian chartered accountants based in UAE. And our Institute of Chartered Accountants, Dubai chapter, is one of the largest international chapters, and it has more than 3,000 members. And so it's a very strong fraternity of chartered accountants. And I'm sure if one visits and creates the right contact and connects, there is a possibility of good amount of work flowing both ways.
Okay, thank you. There is one more, Mr. Sanjay Gupta. He wants to know what is typical cost for setting up of onshore LLC in UAE and the time frame.
See, there are, as I mentioned, there are different areas, I mean, free zones where you can set up, or even in the mainland that you can set up. Now, depending on the business that you wish to do, we'll have to decide upon what is the infrastructure requirement. Because one thing we have to understand in UAE, when you want to set up a company, every company needs to first apply for company registration. Along with that, you have to also apply for a license to carry out a particular activity. So it's not like in India, you set up a company and you put in the memorandum all the activities under the sun, more or less, and you are allowed to carry out. Here, you have to specify exactly if you're going to do, let's say, consulting. So you have to specify, I'll be doing consulting, and you are given license for that. So that is a cost. Other than that, every company has to have an independent office of its own. So it's not that, again, in many centers, you see that in one office, you have hundreds of companies registered. No, here you need to. So, those are the costs. Minimum, if I say, it would be around 15,000 dirhams annually. So in rupee terms, it will be around maybe 3,25,000, 3,50,000 rupees. And it can go up to 70, 80,000 dirhams. So technically, it's a very wide range I'm giving, but depending on very many factors, this would be the range. So any specific what we would request you is, we will share on the chat also the email ID where you can send your specific question on what exactly you wish to carry out, and we can guide you with respect to that.
Okay, there is one more question from the same person, Mr. Sanjay Gupta. Can India CA certify UAE accounts or CPA from US?
No. You need to have a license to practice as an auditor in UAE. So that has to be obtained from the UAE Ministry of Economy, which is the nodal agency regulating the audit profession. And, there you will need to, once you take that license, then only you are allowed to certify the financial statements. Otherwise, it will not be accepted.
Thank you. There is Mr. Raghav Taparia. He is a chartered accountant, and he is asking, planning to set up a firm for corporate compliance and taxes. What are the possible opportunities?
There is great amount of opportunity. As I mentioned, corporate tax and compliance is a new subject which is coming in and is being implemented in UAE. So definitely someone with experience and the right knowledge can definitely get good business. Of course, one has to always, any new country or any new place that you go and start something new, there will be gestation period. And UAE is, of course, cost-wise is not going to be very cheap in terms of starting and doing business. But obviously, once you have passed that gestation period and you have some momentum, definitely it's a very good potential.
Okay, thank you. There is Mr. Harish Varagiri. He is asking, any scope of job for practitioners in India, some guidance and support needed.
Again, as I think I said earlier already, with respect to one another question by a gentleman about job and all that, there is a good amount of potential and opportunity in audit, in tax, in accounting, in finance, all these sectors. There is great amount of opportunity. Before we go on to next question, Monesh, actually I wanted to ask Pankaj ji. I mean, he is an expert on the startups, and he's done a lot of work in that segment. What do you think, Pankaj ji? Startups, of course, as you rightly said, UAE is coming up as funding. It is funding a lot of startups, and a lot of investment is coming in from here. So there are many successful startups in India, and those successful startups, some of them, how can they be replicated in UAE? And those startups can take advantage of this UAE market, not just UAE, but UAE and Middle East market. And what can be done? How that can be probably, because I'm sure there is a good amount of opportunity in that segment.
Thank you for your valued session was very much valuable addition. I just pointed out the startup because it's the new area growing in the world where India is trying to give something to the world, definitely in the business space. Social space is also there, but business space getting the most speed and faster. In my presentation, I told you about the insurance sector and logistics sector. They're directly affecting because the business will be done through port and business will be done through the areas where the amount of blockage of funds will be there. So working capital requirement of the corporates will be very high in company based in UAE because a lot of the amounts is being loaded on the port and it will be blocked in the funds. So a startup will be definitely helping them in providing a short-term funds where the amount can be released till the new port consignment is issued for 10 days, 15 days. They need a liquidity cushion for that. Like for 20 days when the port gets loaded, unloaded and getting back to it or getting refurnished or getting repacked of it. So during that process, a startup can come an idea and also in startup can come like we will be a solution provider to your all type one type stop solutions. We'll be providing you all services related to the logistics, insurance and all this. And next factor which is important is banking. So you definitely get a neo banking and fintech registration. Like in India, there's a corporate culture of cooperative banks, private sector bank, nationalized bank, neo banking, NBFCs like sector there. So in the UAE also kind of sector which can be developed where just I got the conclusion from that MSME sector is also greatly contributing to the economy of the UAE. So this MSME could not afford funds at a larger rate of interest. They needs a cushion of the fund for their short-term working capitals. So this is a space where a startup funding related activity can get a greater boost, which I got from this study. And next area is like when you become a logistics hub across the globe and a finance hub. It is most important, finance. Ultimately, when finance will come, all role will be played there. A startup will need an ecosystem of all the culture of the countries. They need culture of America, they will need culture of Russia, they will need culture of Germany. So this, where do you find this one culture at a place? The few countries in the world are like Hong Kong, Singapore. These are the countries where you can test your product across the globe within a few states or within a city. You can get a taste of the product and introduce the product into that markets. So this is what startups can experiment their ecosystem. So UAE is going to be the biggest ecosystem in kind of development and implementation of the product for global scale. This is what there is my interpretation of reading. Everybody reads the documents according to its perception. Many read it as a compliances purpose. I read as an opportunity purpose. So now the many startups are going from India to Dubai for just getting the funds. That is the most important, because when global areas are there, all funding will be there. So the funding requirement will be immense and all will be done digitally and through a technology. So the blockchain technology is the biggest opportunity where UAE should look upon, where the banking sector will definitely go. The next sector is digital currency. We have already launched a digital currency on 1st November in wholesale segment. When government to government oil bonds will be released, definitely it is now in US dollar. In a few years, it will be happening through a digital currency. So that technology has to be adopted by professionals and considering the future concept of it. So a lot to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm sure I have a lot to learn from you on this subject, and I think
I'm just a student of that because
no. We all are, of course, that way student, but you have a lot of knowledge and experience on this particular segment, and you are also, the most important part is, you're sharing that knowledge and wealth of knowledge with a lot of people, to help them in their own practice and profession, which is a great thing.
I try my subordinates or my colleagues to climb up in the future, because all the traditional practice is on the mesmerizing position of having a dead end. So we should find a ray of hope. The ray of hope are this technology. So definitely we'll get a lot scope over, and we need a hand in hand with technological persons. At this age, definitely you also need to learn blockchain. I need also learn. the
Yes.
blockchain. I need to learn Ethereum technology. I need to learn Ethereum technology. So the changes are immense. And Dubai, UAE being the part of, it's the heart of the globe. So automatically it has to change with the permutation and combination across the globe.
Yes.
They cannot now, due to the oil, they were the main guiding factor for the globe. But now due to alternative fuels, which are getting a lot of importance across the globe, as the most of the economy is facing inflationary problem due to this economic crisis, they are shifting to. So this year budget of 1st February is a very super budget for alternative fuels, defense, pharma, and pharmaceuticals. These are the very best sectors in India which you can look upon very easily. And similarly, their pilot projects will be run in definitely in kind of UAE and Dubai kind of this scenario.
Right. And what you mentioned is very true. I think, I just wish to highlight that UAE also has realized this, and they are moving towards the newer technology, the sunrise industry, as we call it, of, alternative fuels, sustainability.
Yes, sustainability.
And, even space technology. So, these are new age industries which UAE is focusing, and they have actually created a ministry for advanced industrial development and technology.
Yes.
So, that's a new thinking altogether.
So that my presentation include all that MSME report.
Yes.
Not the time was not permissible, and due to we have to give just only the gimmicks or a trailer of the picture that everybody can make the movie out of it how he doesn't want to look upon it. But definitely we are moving in an era of an open-ended market where a village will be dominating and big cities will be thinking of what to do. This is going to happen in India and across the globe. There is now no barrier of cities, no barrier of, because technology can be taken anywhere.
Anywhere.
Operated from anywhere. Currency is no binding. Digital currency will come anywhere.
Yes.
Techs are operating anywhere. So this is what a lot of the discussions and debate power will be heading.
Right. Monesh, I think we can take just a couple of questions and close. I think similar related questions, I think, which already have
all
been
are similar. All are similar.
Yeah. So there is one more from Mr. Divi Garg. How to set up accounting outsource consultancy in Dubai?
So again, see, if you wish to set up a company, you can set up a company in a free zone with that particular activity of bookkeeping, accounting. So, primarily that allows you to carry out that activity and offer it to clients within UAE anywhere. And specifics, I think we can share. If you can just send us an email on the email ID I have shared on the chat box. Mr. Monesh Mehta, who is present here, moderating the session, he will reply to your query.
Sure. There is Mr. Sanjay Gupta. He wants to know what type of entities will be best for CAs in India to create in UAE, according to accounting purposes, like accounting and taxation.
See, again, it is related to similar to what we answered earlier, set up in a free zone, depending, of course, on what infrastructure they require, offices, number of people they wish to employ. I think it would depend, the cost and all that would depend on that. So we can, I think, get into the specifics directly on a one-to-one.
There is two more questions which can take. There is Santosh, Mr. CA Santosh. He is asking, is there any separate qualification required for doing audit assignment in UAE?
Audit assignment, primarily if you wish to be an auditor or certify financials, you need to take a license from UAE Ministry of Economy, as I had mentioned earlier. So one needs to now, to obtain that license, of course, the CA or equivalent of CA degrees, because UAE does not have its own CA institute. They have accredited institutions from across the world, which they recognize and accept. So you should have a degree, CA degree from those institutions. And you should also have experience in UAE. So technically, anyone coming from India directly may not be able to get an audit license in its own name, may have to join an existing audit firm as an employee or something, work for a few years, get experience, and then you will be entitled. And of course, they have a test also which you have to undergo. So those requirements will need to be fulfilled.
Okay, so I think we can answer these other questions online.
Yes, sir. We should conclude it.
Yeah, we can.
So, yeah.
Now that brings us to the end of yet another interesting session. It was a pleasure having you all here with us, and I'm sure most of your questions would have been resolved by now. If you still have any queries, please do not hesitate to reach out to us anytime, and we shall be more than happy to assist you. I would like to thank our speakers for taking the time and effort in organizing an informative session like this. Once again, we thank each one of you for your valuable time and participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pankaj. It was real pleasure interacting with you.
So
And
it's
I think
really-
we will
Thank you.
connect one-to-one and exchange our views and thoughts. I think there
Yes,
are
sir,
a lot
yes,
many things that I can learn from you, and we'll look forward to, I think,
Yes, sir.
connecting.
We both should learn from each other, then only growth
Yes.
will happen in this all the sectors, because we want to cater all the sector. Being a professional,
Yes.
we are not master of one, we have to be jack of all. So
Right. True.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
Thank you,
much.
Pankaj.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manish bhai. Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.